What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Tonight I spent a little time and fixed a problem with my double-up that had been happening since the bingo row, and all the movement, commotion, falling, all that good stuff that happened to the head of it. So what was happening is the machine would be stuck in tilt. Now, what I wanted to talk about tonight, though, was not this particular problem, but the two kinds of tilt that bingo machines have. There are many ways that Bally bingos in particular were able to figure out if someone was attempting to cheat. Over time, they developed even more, but one of the easiest and simplest ways are the two different kinds of tilt. You have a hard tilt, and you have a soft tilt. Now, hard tilt is what you might think of as a traditional tilt. You nudge the machine a little too hard, and a trip relay drops out, and all of a sudden the game goes dead. That's what I call a hard tilt, and it works the same in a bingo. So you have the plumb bob tilt, it hits the ring, or you have your slam tilt switch, and that opens or closes, and that will cause the trip relay to drop out, and that will tilt your game. But there's also the soft tilt, and the soft tilt is when you turn the game on initially, it will show tilt on the back glass, but the tilt trip relay is not actually tripped. And this is on later games with an 8-step timer. Games with a 40-step timer, the timer will continue to advance until it hits the limit switch. But on the games made after about 1960, Bally switched to the 8-step timer, and in this case, the game will soft tilt. And the only thing that happens is that the anti-cheat relay is not engaged, and therefore the tilt light will display. But it's not actually hard tilted. The tilt trip is not engaged. And so there's an entire different circuit that will handle coining up from the soft tilt state versus the hard tilt state. And this actually was the problem that I fixed tonight. If the game went into a hard tilt, it wouldn't coin back up, no matter what I did. Well, the issue is that the two switches, which are normally open, and when the tilt trip drops out, become closed, are supposed to power alternate circuits to allow the coin switch to receive power and the buttons on the front of the game if you have replays on the register. Unfortunately, neither of those was working properly. So, what I ended up doing is taking that trip relay apart, looking at those switches. They were pretty clean, but I adjusted them to be a little bit tighter, reassembled, and all was well. And the switches were very close. They were not very far off of adjustment, because occasionally you would turn it on and it would actually function for a while until it was hard tilted, and then it would stop. Or sometimes it wouldn't. And that's the nature of an intermittent problem that's caused by a switch which is only partially making. Now, the other thing that can cause this soft tilt state is related to how the games end with an 8-step timer. The timer times out, and the machine goes into a different kind of soft tilt. It's one where it shuts off the motors. And this soft tilt is engaged by the 8th step on the timer unit itself. But in this case, it doesn't light the tilt light on the back glass, indicating to the player or the person who steps up to the game that it can be revived and played from there, or you can play for extra balls at that point. It's a pretty interesting thing to think about, the change from the 40 step with a hard tilt that's forced upon the player at the time that the game decides, versus these games with the R button from 1960 plus, where under player control you can revive the game, bring it back to life, continue playing if you want, earn additional balls, and then score in ways that you couldn't previously. It's pretty interesting. And of course, if you've listened to some of my other podcasts about the problems that this has caused, and my recent interview with Jeffrey Lawton and Robert Badel, we touch on this subject as well. When Bally switched to the 8-step timer, it really caused some interesting bugs in their hardware timing that they hadn't really thought about. But for the most part, it's an excellent idea. Because once the game is hard tilted, there's no way to revive it. From a soft tilt, you can revive a number of different ways. And it all depends on what's engaged, what's disengaged, and how those circuits interact. Bally was very clever. Don Hooker and the engineers over at Bally really considered these games carefully. Well, the good news is Double Up is fully functional again, which will make Sophie very happy. That's her favorite game. And I managed to get a 64 replay hit after putting in about 35 credits, so I came out ahead just barely, I guess. I posted that to Facebook. Then I put another 5 credits in and got another 64 replay hit. So that worked out pretty well after a time, but it didn't look good at first. Well, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.